I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. Coming back at you with another three-parter this week. My name is Brandon, as always, joined by Nick and Dan. And this week, to help us knock out these three topics, we have the Chelsea correspondent, one of our favorite people in the world to hang out with in London, Nizaar Kinseall. What's up? We see you rocking the pink Palermo kit. We appreciate it, bringing a little excitement to our lives.
Flair.
Yeah, dressing a bit casual because that's the way I've dressed every single day since lockdown happened in the UK. So, my shirts are basically useless now. Don't even get them out of the closet. I don't know what it's like to wear jeans anymore. It's just a very casual vibe going on. And, you see people doing these Zoom chats all over the place and everyone's kind of dressing the same, aren't they? So, usually I come on this pod and I've just been to a game, but sadly not this time.
Yeah, are you counting?
In 2 months. I mean, it's great. My shorts are getting a workout.
Appreciate that update.
No pants. Currently not wearing pants. It's great.
Well, there goes our YouTube views on this episode, but thankfully it's chest up, so you're safe, watchers and listeners. Anyway, so this week, since we have Naz on the pod, we kind of wanted to touch on in this first part, the end of transfers as we know it. Obviously, Naz, you've been heavily involved in kind of what this means and contract extensions and Project Restart, obviously. But we wanted to kind of tap into, your knowledge and the things you've been immersing yourself with around the business side of the Premier League. So obviously this will really affect this season, next season, the rest of seasons, things like that. So right away at Airthmuggle on Twitter asking, is there any sense of how the transfer window will work this summer with the two seasons squeezing closer towards each other, extended contracts, etc.? And me adding in, I know that was approved. I don't know if that's the right word, that clubs and players can find a mutual agreement for short-term extensions. Does that all sound correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Premier League kind of followed it up this week and said that, but FIFA had already issued guidelines. They were only guidelines, so and they're still on guidelines. So if Willian wants to leave on July the 1st or Pedro wants to leave on July the 1st, they can. Ziyech is joining on July the 1st, but the Premier League might opt, and they've not done this definitively, but they might just say to clubs, and I think they will, that they can't register new players. So these clubs signing new players, not just Chelsea, but everyone else, they have to wait to see those new talents come into the dressing rooms. But at least Ziyech can train with the club and stuff like that. So that'll be quite cool. Those are kind of situations really around it. Is that when's the registration going to happen? Probably after the season, we expect. But the current players whose contracts are expiring, will they carry on? They can come to an agreement, but you still have to do a deal. So Chelsea will have to do a deal before the 23rd of June. That's the cut-off point to get a player over the line to extend them before their contract expires. They officially expire on June the 30th, but they have to send the registrations in by that date. That's how it kind of works. Hopefully that's clear. It's very complicated. It's very boring, but actually fans are really interested in this side of the game, and it is important. And actually, Chelsea are in probably a bit of a negative position on this one because they do have three outfield players' contracts expiring and Willy Caballero, and that's probably more than most big clubs have this summer. So it is a problem for Chelsea.
Yeah, Brandon, our number one goalkeeper is out after June the 30th. What are we going to do?
Okay, he's not our number one. Obviously, we've leaned on him more than you would have hoped to this season. Dan, one of the things I think would have been hilarious. Can you imagine Arsene Wenger in this situation? I mean, he hated contracts the way it was, but for him to have to deal with all this uncertainty, and not only did he hate players coming in the middle of the season, can you imagine players leaving in the middle of the season at Arsenal?
Well, I think most of us have been watching the Last Dance documentary, and I'm thinking about like Krause and Reinsdorf having to go back and negotiate another round of contracts with players. It just would be off the table. And so, is there any sense, Naz, in this regard that, I know some quotes have come out from Willian about like just the concerns that the players are having about likelihood of not agreeing to any type of extension. Like, I think, you think about Willian, has been long-term in the club. Pedro came over, has done some good stuff. Caballero has been kind of year on year here. Any concern maybe about those three getting secured?
Yeah, well, I should mention Olivier Giroud seems to have extended his deal. We've had all that information to us. Every journalist's been the same. So he's probably not a headache. But when it comes to, Willian, I think that Willian really loves Chelsea, genuinely. And it's not just, it's not just a silly thing to say. I think that Chelsea have struggled to get this deal over the line. He wanted a 3-year deal, which probably a lot of Chelsea fans would say is too long for a player of his age, but he believes he's really good. His status is really high in the game. And, I think that he also thinks that he does have that value as a sort of Chelsea protagonist. Like, some people might agree, and Willian polarizes the fan base. But he also really loves the club as well. So I could see him easily signing that extension. But he did sort of come out and say that he's more nervous about the health side of things. And that's a concern. And we're probably going to go into that a little bit more later. So that might be an issue. Willy loves the club as well, and I think that I could see him signing on. And if he wants to leave, which I'm not sure about yet at this stage, but he could probably easily find a club. And Willy's a great backup goalie as well. Like, it's been a great signing for Chelsea in the summer a few years ago when Drinkwater and Bakayoko came in as well. He was a positive that summer in the end. Pedro, a bit of a question mark over Pedro myself, just because the kind of clubs that are coming in for him now, he had like MLS clubs, which not to rip on the league, but it's a certain choice you're making when you go to the MLS as Pedro, Chelsea's most decorated player, and also J-League clubs. But now it's Roma and Betis, and now he's getting sort of big decisions to make. And there's also the kind of thing like, do you play? Do you want to play? You're going to play your hardest, even if if you've got an agreement there with Real Betis at the end of it, and you might get injured. You might be injured for your new club, and the seasons might be back-to-back as well. It might be Premier League over, straight into playing for another team without a pre-season. So there's like all these different, it's really complicated, and it's going to be very individual and personal. And I think that, fans will probably have to give a bit of leeway and not be too hard on the players, based on their choices. And it is going to be a case of clubs agreeing with players. It's nothing is in the club's favour. The players really have a choice, so it's about getting that deal done before June 23rd and getting over the line. And for Chelsea, there's still a lot to play for. So if they do get back, which we all hope they do, there will be stuff to play for, and these players will play a role.
Well, and just on the Willian point really quick, because I think he's probably, of those three, the most prominent one that's been kind of rumored about, right? We've seen rumors that have linked him to Liverpool, to Arsenal, to Tottenham, and basically every club in England that had money enough to kind of pay for his services. So just from what you're hearing, is it more likely that, just given current circumstances with the virus, that he would sign something that isn't his ideal contract to stay at Chelsea, or is he really looking for that 3-year deal wherever he goes?
Yeah, I think there's probably some leeway. I think a 2-year deal might be possible with Willy, and I think similar to David Luiz, maybe kind of like usually what happens with these situations is the longer deal you offer, the less money you have to offer them, week by week. So it might be a case that you offer him more money for a shorter contract or something like that. We've seen that many times before. The problem with Willy, and that's also the benefit, is that he loves London. He absolutely loves London. He loves playing for Chelsea. I think his genuine personal ideal choice would be to stay at Chelsea, and I think that he wants to do everything the right way. But then on the flip side, his family loves Chelsea, they love living in London, but then that gives kind of Tottenham and Arsenal a really big chance. And I don't think he's going to go to Liverpool, but Tottenham and Arsenal don't have any money, Tottenham don't really have any money, so this free transfer market is going to be huge for those clubs, and he's really one of the top guys they can possibly get. And obviously there's the Mourinho factor, which I think his comments were taken a bit out of context with Mourinho the other week, that he's texting him and he'd agreed a deal or whatever. But certainly that's a factor that could work in their favour. So yeah, I can only see him playing for a London club in the next next season. It's going to be one of the three. It just depends who wants him the most.
Yeah, with Willian, definitely, he's Premier League proven, definitely still has a lot to offer. I think we've just, as Chelsea fans, have wanted to see more of the finished article from him. You know, maybe he's been put in situations of taking free kicks and corners. It's not his forte, but we really haven't had anyone else. And he's just been in situations, unfortunately, that haven't been that successful. But I watched Chelsea's, they put a video of counterattacks, you know, from the last handful of years out on YouTube. Willian was in at least half of them. Like, he's there. We just have to be set up to do that. And to this point, it's probably some of his best seasons under Mourinho, or the Mourinho collapses. So I would 100% agree with you, Naz. He will be in London, and that scares me because I don't know if it'll be at Chelsea. But let's say he goes. There have to be some type of summer signings, we hope, or fall signings, whatever season we end up doing them.
New season signings.
Yeah. What type of transfers are off the table for most clubs? It sounds like these big money moves, Jadon Sancho for 150 million, probably are no longer a thing. And is it more realistic? You know, I know FIFA just put in regulations on loans or maybe short-term contracts. Like, are we going to see Kepa 7-year contracts anymore? Do you have any kind of insight or ideas of what that might look like?
Yeah, I can say a few things about this. I've been looking into a lot of transfer rumours, and I think a lot of people have been treating this coronavirus crisis almost on Twitter and in the media a little bit as like a transfer window. It's not a transfer window. So there's nobody's advancing deals particularly fast at the moment. It's very much the same as it would be if the season had got to this point. You know, if it was April, they'd be like, scouting, a lot of reporting going on. A lot of clubs like build up to the transfer window, and then they start to, make their moves and contact agents and stuff. And there is agent contacts. Clubs are contacting agents, but there's nothing concrete going down on the table, not really any offers. So yeah, the Sancho deal, I think that, Man United's chief executive, Ed Woodward, Chelsea's not the most open club when it comes to transfers, and that's how they got Hakim Ziyech under the radar really smartly. But yeah, Ed Woodward sort of came on the record and said that linking Man United to £100 million deals is very wide of the mark, and I think that that's true for almost every club. The financial situation is just a huge question mark, and we don't know so many things. We don't know whether this football is going to carry on, which is going to massively impact finances. There's already talk that 20% has been wiped off the earnings of clubs, and it can only get worse, really, unfortunately. So somebody's going to have to pay for that. Are the billionaires who own the clubs going to pay for that? Probably not. Are the players going to pay for that with their wages, taking wage cuts? Maybe. And then, if you've taken a wage cut and your club goes and makes £100 million transfer, you're going to be furious about that. And you're going to have to pay a big load of money to this player as well to get him through the door, because he wants a slice of that transfer fee. So yeah, it's so complicated really in that regard. So a lot of agents are like keeping in touch. They know the sorts of clubs that want their player, but there's absolutely no movement. And free transfers, the easiest ones, obviously loans. And I think that a lot of football agents are hoping the market recovers next summer. They're looking almost to next summer for those big moves. So I think that a lot of fans want to see transfer activity, but it might not be the summers they all dream of. And it's a bit unfortunate for Frank Lampard in one way, because he's not spent a lot of money since he joined Chelsea. He's had that transfer ban, and then he had a no transfer January. And it will probably be similar to a January transfer window where the clubs make one decent deal and then sign a loanee and then one free transfer. You might see something like that. I think the big clubs will be quite friendly with each other. They'll probably sort each other out a loan here or there. I think that might be how it works. So, yeah, complicated, really complicated. And I'm struggling to see how it will go. I think Roman Abramovich could be a game changer, though. He might see opportunities, and because of the way Chelsea's funded, Abramovich, he's taken a hit on his personal earnings, but he still funds Chelsea with his personal money. They made a big loss last summer. They made a loss last season, and he still bankrolls the club to an extent. So all this talk of him selling the club is a bit overblown. He's well and truly involved in Chelsea and helping out the club at all levels. community, transfers, every aspect of Chelsea, Abramovich touches. So I think that, if he saw an opportunity in one great player, he might be tempted to just sort of break the mold and do a deal. And clubs, also the selling clubs might be more willing to sell, especially the big opportunities are going to be in like the Championship, in League One, in those small leagues that are going to take a financial hit. And it's horrible to say, but big clubs could be exploitative of smaller clubs in the way that things are, and they could go and make those deals happen. Go sign an unbelievable 18-year-old in League One who's played 40 games and is the next big thing. They could go for those kind of players and really, boost up the sort of squad ranks, really.
So, Nick, that's what I was going to touch on. I didn't want to squarely put it to you, Naz, but obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjaer probably accidentally said that. He's like, we can take advantage of this situation. We're Manchester United. Like, how, I guess, are you worried about the ethics maybe, or kind of like how it's going to play out where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer kind of in this transfer window circumstance?
Yeah, I think that the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. I think that's looking pretty likely. But I think also the big questions and the hard questions, the moral questions, I think, using the word exploitive is wrong, but it's football, it's competitive, and they will exploit any advances they can get, even in whatever crisis. If you're going to be realistic, that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, what Solskjaer said was wrong, but it probably is what's going to happen as well with all these big clubs. But also the big clubs need to give respect to those lower leagues as well. And it might be a case that, Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, they're going to have to, even if they're going to have to give a bit of money to the lower league clubs. Like, they might have to loan them, and they already have given a bit of money, but they might have to give a lot more money. So these are going to be big, big questions. And these are going to affect budgets. So, yeah, free transfers and loans. Chelsea and the other Premier League clubs might have to give a bailout, and they might have to give it proportionally, depending on league position, depending on, finances, whatever. But then they're going to have to sort of, have less to spend as they're saving other clubs. And we saw in England, we've already seen clubs go out of business before this. Bury FC went under, and Bolton nearly went under. And Bolton's not a small club. It's a massive club for its community. Do people value that in this country? I think they do. And I think that big clubs are going to have to save small clubs, but equally, they're probably going to exploit the situation as well.
You mentioned the thought around free transfers being really big this summer or this fall, or be in the signing window. And I think that's why, but maybe you could correct me if it's wrong. That's why players like Mertens are just getting linked with Chelsea consistently, because he's out of contract. He's in a position of need. He maybe isn't necessarily the best option from a striker perspective for Chelsea, but it's because he's a free transfer, and it's, he's basically then would just be a wage-based player, not a wage plus fee player.
Yeah, exactly. Mertens is a very un-Chelsea signing, which is quite interesting. But I think that sort of situation makes him more viable. And I also think that Lampard really likes Dries Mertens, so that's something else. So if those two things come together, that can make a change. And Chelsea have this over 30s policy where they don't offer, well, they kind of broken it with David Luiz and they broke it with Olivier Giroud, but they don't offer more than a 1-year contract. I mean, even John Terry and Frank Lampard didn't get more than 1-year contracts when they turned 30. So that says it all. Like, these guys are mega superstars, obviously. So that kind of situation might, lead to Dries Mertens coming in, and it might lead to them changing their policy on over 30s as well, just because, they're kind of keeping ticking along until things become normal again. And Mertens just having that Lampard sort of, an admiration, which is very interesting. And I think it shows the kind of player that Lampard and Jody Morris like. You look at the academy, and all those players are very versatile. I mean, you can play Mason Mount in loads of different positions. You can play Reece James in 2 different positions. Tomori, you can play him in a couple of different positions as well. So it just shows you the kind of player Lampard likes, which is versatile. And Mertens is the definition of versatile.
Well, Naz, I mean, Lampard is now following him on Instagram, so it's a done deal. I think we can all write about it. It's all good to go. It's interesting, right? Because another one that's come through, which is from United, is the whole Angel Gomez rumor, which came out of nowhere this week. But do you have any insight on that, or why that could be a potential, free transfer to Chelsea?
I think the Angel Gomez one is quite different. I think that, for me, every I've been making inquiries and trying to get to the bottom of it, and I don't have a definitive answer, but I feel very doubtful about this sort of rumour, just because I've been looking at it and a lot of doubt has been cast on it from sources I've spoken to and other journalists. Not to rip on anyone else's stories, but for me, it just feels a little bit like Chelsea being used as a sort of pawn to get a better deal. He's not really a free transfer as well because of his age. It means Chelsea will have to pay compensation.
Oh, right.
And kind of the funny thing about this coronavirus crisis as well is like these compensation fees will feel like even more because, you know, you could sign a player of, 5 million maybe from League One and the Championship who's got more experience. So it might not be a good deal for Chelsea in the end. That might be an issue. And if he's not good enough for Man United, he's not good enough for the team above Man United at the table, which is another thing for me. And then, the other thing I was thinking about Angel is that, you know, you're looking at Chelsea Academy and there's loads of number 10s coming through. It could upset the apple cart. And I know there's a lot of goodwill with Frank Lampard and what he's done, which has been brilliant. But does Loftus need him there? Does Tino Andrea need him there? Does Mason Mount need him there? Probably not. I don't think Chelsea need him. He's not a priority. Same with Pjanic, who's an option for Chelsea. I'm sure they want Jorginho Juve. I'm sure they want to swap it. But it's not a good swap for Chelsea. It doesn't feel like it makes sense on paper. But that is the sort of deal we will see in the next transfer window. So, yeah, for Angel, I'm not seeing much in that one. But, I could be wrong.
Look, anytime you can snag a promising player from a rival, you know, there's some kind of the mind games being played there, but I don't think that's really going to be a thing, to your point, post COVID-19 situation. So if Chelsea are sitting here at the old boardroom table, we've got Naz in the corner. One position that Chelsea need to go after, since you said pretty much you're going to get one real signing and then, you know, try to be creative for the other signings. One position. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I could tell you what Lampard's thinking. He'd go left back and Mertens probably. I would say he'd be happy with like a top left back and Dries Mertens through the door, maybe a loan to supplement a position, maybe centre back. But yeah, I think that's probably the way he would look. I mean, you're looking at some of the rumours and there's a lot of talk about central midfield, but Kante's not leaving anytime soon. He's staying around. And, you know, he's had a bad season, but he's allowed one bad season. He's been unbelievable for 4 years, whatever. Let the man have an off season, man.
That's World Cup winner N'Golo Kante to you, sir. You.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think that's the sort of scenario we've got at Chelsea. So central midfielder, absolutely not. And I think that even, you know, a lot of people underestimate, you know, what Ross Barkley was doing just before this all stopped. So football all stopped. But he sprung together 3 out of 4 games in a row where he was sensational, coupled by one of his worst games against Bayern Munich. But it was just, you know, a sign that Lampard might be able to get something out of Barkley that's always been there, but it's not quite come out. And then you got Billy Gilmour coming through, who we can't underestimate his talent. It is every single football professional, Roy Keane, even if you don't Chelsea, people were just coming out saying, wow, this guy is unreal. And, you know, it's obvious. It's obvious he's immensely talented. And I would have stuck around with him in the team for a while. I would have kept him in the team. So you've got that. You've got Jorginho. You've got Kovacic, who's having a great season. Loftus-Cheek might be, you know, one of England's most talented players as well. Just needs to get on the pitch more often. So, you know, that position's tied up. I think centre-back's an interesting one because I think that nobody really excels for Chelsea at centre-back. They're all good. They're all very good. But nobody's great, and they don't have a Van Dijk. And that's kind of a tension there because maybe they could sell somebody and try to bring in a superstar there, which could be a difference maker. But it's a big decision. And I think in the current market with all that's going on, I think that's not going to happen. So for me, I would sort out left back basically because Lampard doesn't like the left backs he's got. And I think they're all right, actually. I think Emerson isn't that bad. I think he's had a really bad time, been really out of form, but I think there's something there. And I think Alonso obviously is better. We all know it. Better wing back. He's a phenomenal wing back, pretty average left back, but still a good player to have. I don't think it's the end of the world. Chelsea don't go big. And the great thing about Chelsea is the academy can fill a lot of gaps. Other clubs don't have that as much as Chelsea.
Bring in a left back, Brandon. Put Alonso at striker. We have 2 positions solved.
Look, Alonso's worth keeping just for the 2 times a year we play Spurs at a minimum. So, at that point. All right. Well, thank you, Naz, for sharing Frank's insights. It makes sense, though. I think a lot of people will probably, like you said, talk about striker and defending in general. And think Hakim Ziyech just coming in from an attacking option. Like you said, being clever with Idris Mertens, potentially a free signing for someone up there. But invest in the back line. I would definitely agree with that. And I think that's the smartest route. But that'll wrap it up for this first one, end of transfers as we know it. The next part, we'll be talking about the Chelsea women's season being ended. So make sure to come back on Wednesday for that. Naz will be here. So Naz, thanks for the time. We'll see you in part 2. So thankfully don't have to wait too long. But everyone go follow Naz if you don't already. His links will be in the description. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.